A kiss was a common greeting in the Middle East. They didn't shake hands. They would do kind of a just touching cheek sort of kiss. But Jesus calls him friend. That just slices my heart. The Judas kiss. Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins. Good to be back with you as we continue our trek through the Gospel of John. We are in chapter 18, and today we'll be covering verses 4 to 5. I will be reading from the Legacy Standard Bible as always, so you're welcome to look on in your own, or you can just listen in. So here we go. John chapter 18, verses 4 to 5 says this. So Jesus, knowing all the things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" And by the way, he is talking to the religious leaders and this huge Roman army of like 600 plus that are there. So back to the passage. They answered him, "Jesus the Nazarene." He said to them, "I am he." And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with them. As we said in previous studies this week, John records a lot of aspects to Jesus' life and ministry that the other gospel writers don't record. And if you weren't with us for those studies, I'll just say that the reason that we believe John's gospel is different than the others is because his was by far the last to be written. And he, under the Holy Spirit's inspiration, obviously, didn't think it made sense to recount the same exact details one more time. So John fills in some blanks that the others leave out and vice versa. So if you want the fullest picture of Jesus, you need to really read all four Gospels. So maybe you read this and you wonder, wait a minute, didn't Judas betray Jesus with a kiss? Am I off on that? No, the answer is yes, he did. But John doesn't record that part because Matthew already recorded it in chapter 26, and we'll just read verses 47 to 49. That gives us that detail. And so here's what he says. He says, "And while he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, came up, and with him was a large crowd with swords and clubs who came from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now, he who was betraying him gave them a sign, saying, 'Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him.' And immediately Judas went to Jesus and said, 'Greetings, Rabbi,' and kissed him. And Jesus said to him, 'Friend, do what you have come for.' And then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him." So here seems to be the order of events if you kind of combine Matthew and John's gospel accounts. It seems as though Jesus is met by a huge crowd of Roman soldiers, likely over 600, along with the temple police and those religious leaders who ordered the temple police around, like the Pharisees and chief priests and maybe some others. Jesus is standing there. Judas walks over to him and greets him, as we just read in Matthew. And as you probably know, a kiss was a common greeting in the Middle East. They didn't shake hands. They would do kind of a just touching cheek sort of kiss. You see this still in other parts of the world. It might be a double cheek kiss, but it's just a way of greeting. It's nothing more than that. But Jesus calls him friend. That just slices my heart. I mean, when I got to thinking about it, I thought, honestly, no wonder Judas committed suicide shortly after this. I mean, how on earth do you ever get past what you did? Well, after the kiss and very brief exchange of words between Judas and Jesus, Jesus looked at the leaders in the crowd and asked them whom they had come for, which is where John picks up the story. When Jesus asked the question, "Whom do you seek?" the leaders answered, "Jesus the Nazarene." This was a way to identify Jesus from other men who would have also shared his name, who have been around. It wasn't that uncommon of a name at that time. So, since they didn't have last names like we do, they were often identified by where they were from. And you'll read that all over the Gospels. A lot of people are put together with the area that they're from. It's how they differentiated people with common names. However, in this case, I just have to think that it is also just a reference to Jesus in purely and merely human terms, kind of reducing him to merely human. Of course, they didn't want to acknowledge any divinity whatsoever. So when he asks, their answer is a complete earthly one. But what happens next is pretty incredible. So they identify Jesus in purely human terms, and Jesus answers them back with 100% divinity. In verse 5, where Jesus says, I am He, just know that the word He is not in the original text. So some translations, like the one I use, the Legacy Standard Bible, put that word he in italics to indicate to the reader that that was added for clarity's sake. I sort of wish, though, that they hadn't added it at all, because the text actually makes more sense without the word he added than with it. If you were with us when we studied the book of Exodus, we'll go back to chapter 3, verses 13 to 14 for just a moment. This will be a familiar story to you. And this is what it says way back in Exodus. It says, Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am about to come to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they will say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, this is amazing, I am who I am. And he said, Thus shall you say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent you. So don't miss this moment. I have chills just thinking about it. Jesus asked this huge entourage who they're coming for. And the leaders identify him as Jesus of Nazareth, which isn't incorrect, but it really strips him of any divinity or dignity. And Jesus answers them back with 2 words, I am. Tomorrow, we are going to find out what happens upon the utterance of those 2 tiny words. And suffice it to say, the reaction of the crowd of strong, fighting men is quite something. I can't wait to go over it with you tomorrow. For today, however, we're out of time. So thank you so much for being with me here on Bible Study Hub. We go live with our videos every Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. My hope and prayer is that this is just a way for you to get in the habit of just starting your day off with the Lord, spending a little time in His Word, focusing your thoughts on Him makes for such a better day. Until tomorrow, have a good one, and I'll see you then on Bible Study Hub.